A soldier's life is far from easy, even before they've stepped a foot on the battlefield. Grueling training programs mean that new recruits are subjected to intense physical stress, harrowing psychological pressure, and a strict routine to build discipline. But that's just for your ordinary low-ranking personnel. When armies of the world train their elite units, everything ramps up a notch. The kind of training that makes us civilians want to cry for help. Ready to find out the most insane military training programs in the world? Let's get it on! Body smashing. When your northern neighbor is one of the most aggressive and secretive countries in the world, your military has to be ready for anything. Elite soldiers in a South Korean training program put their bodies through extreme conditioning skills that look like they come straight out of an action movie. They're trained in Krav Maga, an Israeli martial arts system known for its brutal and effective striking and grappling. Add in some precision choreography, and you've got a brick-breaking spectacle that would make anyone back away slowly. But that's not all. Soldiers are also trained in Taekwondo, a traditional Korean martial art, although they occasionally add in a huge knife for good measure. In fact, weapons play is a massive part of the South Korean Special Forces training, as they're taught to fight in a range of environments and conditions, armed with knives, bats, poles, and other deadly everyday weapons. The South Korean elite forces are so tough, it's the sole reason why no one makes fun of K-pop. Navy SEAL Hell Week. Imagine it. You've endured a few months of your grueling 6-month training to be a Navy SEAL when you're told you're about to enter what's called Hell Week. If the statistics are anything to go by, you won't be here long, as the rate of completion for basic SEAL training is under 10%. So what is this week exactly? It's a 6-day gauntlet involving students running more than 200 miles, often with boats on their heads. There's swimming, hours of physical training with logs. You get the picture. And to add insult to injury, they're also constantly wet, cold, sandy, and get about 4 hours of sleep throughout the week. It starts with thousands of machine gun blanks going off as the instructors seek to shock and awe the students. Next, hundreds of push-ups, sit-ups, flutter kicks, and then surf torture. Surf torture involves students locking arms and lying on the surf for minutes at a time. Other fun activities include a 12-hour boat race, hallucinations due to the lack of sleep, and 15 hours of different mud events. You can also get sent back to previous stages of the training, even back to the beginning if you aren't keeping up. Overall, sounds like fun. Taiwan Marine Corps. The Road to Heaven is the final stage of a grueling 10-week amphibious training program for the Taiwanese Marine Corps. Candidates must crawl 164 feet over jagged, porous coral rocks in a pair of shorts. The challenge starts with a hard fall from standing to a planking position. If that wasn't tough enough on the elbows, the crawl across the rocks now begins. The training has some utility as a simulation of landing on a rocky beach, but is mainly a test to conquer pain. "I don't fear pain!" the recruits shout as they cross the razor-sharp rocks. The path has 10 stopping points, which sound like they might be a chance to stop and rest, but no. The recruits must stop at these points and perform an exercise. If an instructor isn't satisfied with how the recruit performs this exercise, they'll be ordered to start again. And to pour salt in their wounds, they actually pour salt in their wounds as they make their way through the course. At the end of this grueling challenge, successful Marines have earned their place among Taiwan's elite soldier unit. Iron Army. The People's Liberation Army of China, or PLA, is the biggest army in the world, with an estimated 2 million troops. During winter training sessions, soldiers throw snow onto their bodies in below freezing temperatures to condition their bodies. Heavy snowfall doesn't slow them down either. With pistol training, log drills, and sub-zero, semi-naked crawls through the thick snow. To warm up, they're then asked to jump through rings of fire. It may not be super useful, but it does look cool. PLA training is so intense that they literally torment their soldiers by tying a cross to their backs in an attempt at encouraging a military posture. And just to prove that PLA has a sense of humor, they've also invented a fun variation of hot potato with a live grenade. They pass the grenade around with the pin pulled out before the last person throws it in a hole for a contained explosion. Cold weather training. Now, this next training program takes place in freezing cold conditions, and for good reason. In the cold February, more than 24 Army Rangers with battalions from the 75th Ranger Regiment bolster their skills as part of a 14-day cold weather operations course class. The course is a mix of classroom instruction and intense cold weather training, with the Rangers receiving tips on preventing cold weather injuries before being thrust out into a gauntlet of challenges. Practical skills are taught first, like shelter building, fire making, and heat conservation, observation. Then come a series of grueling hikes. But if you think you could stay dry during this course, you'd be dead wrong. The students are dunked in ice-cold water for good measure and are tested on how long they can stay in the water before tapping out or passing out. Surf Passage. Surf Passage is one of the most iconic and formidable parts of U.S. Navy SEAL training. Small teams of SEAL candidates carry their boats above their heads into the ocean, fighting the crashing waves of San Diego's Silver Strand. They then have to get into their boats and paddle out past the break. It's wet, heavy, and there's constant 3 to 5 feet high waves trying to push them back to the shore. The result is carnage. Boats flip with bodies, oars, and helmets flying everywhere. Sometimes boats even crash into each other. One recruit recalls a fellow trainee being hit by a boat near the shore, breaking both his legs. So yeah, fun stuff. Helo Dunker. Marines must train for every mission possibility and always have contingency plans for when things go wrong. One such situation is a helicopter crash landing in the ocean. To train for this, Marines are provided with a simulation that helps them survive if it were to ever happen in real combat. After jumping into a pool while wearing most of their combat load, Marines swam their way into a mock helicopter that's slowly submerging into water. The helicopter is then spun while being lowered into the water. They're also blindfolded for added confusion. Once the helicopter is submerged, the Marines try to escape. The windows in the helicopters are designed to be removed in a hurry, so once a Marine successfully overcomes this obstacle, they can evacuate and swim to the surface. They say it's better to be safe than sorry. I'd prefer to be dry. Water Challenge. Have any aspirations to be a Navy SEAL? Maybe put them on hold if this looks like too much for you. Navy Special Operations recruits are expected to dive underwater while having their masks ripped off, fins taken, and air hoses tied in knots. This is all done so the SEALs can learn to adapt to anything that goes wrong in the water. One of the scariest teaching tactics they employ is called the beehive. Sounds pretty friendly, right? It involves candidates being pushed into the deep end of a pool in a tight group, shoulder to shoulder, while trying to stay afloat. If just one of them panics and grabs the person next to them, it starts a chain reaction, causing a chaotic fight for life. Also, did I mention all of these tasks are to be completed with your hands tied? Safe to say, you probably shouldn't try any of these at home. Mud Run. In 2017, the British Royal Marines released footage of their brutal mud run training course. As part of the infamous mud run, the recruits were tasked with various exercises in the thick, wet slop. There are log drills, crawling races, backstroke exercises, and more log carrying, all in the mud that just gets heavier and thicker throughout the day. This makes your weekly gym session seem like a stroll in the park, doesn't it? While all this seems manageable for a potential Royal Marine, it wasn't just soldiers that were expected to complete the course. Musicians from the Royal Marines School of Music were taken out of their comfy cabins and thrown into the mud as well. Not sure how this helps them play instruments, but it probably beats their other band camp stories. Russian Spetsnaz. The training of Spetsnaz soldiers in Russia paints a pretty grim picture. Elite soldiers are faced with a gauntlet of challenges in cold, wet, and disgusting conditions. They're taught intense combat drills, weapons handling, and street fighting tactics in a discipline known as Sambo. In this brutal martial art, recruits are trained to use anything from broken bottles to street signs to best their opponents. And these guys are also taught to both perform and resist interrogation, work as an immediate medical aid for their teammates, and become expert parajumpers. Besides a series of forced marches through mud, full contact sparring, and tests of extreme endurance, one of their craziest routines involves throwing a hatchet at a target while doing a flip over barbed wire. You know, just in case. Unfortunately, as is always the case in Russia, sometimes the training goes a little too far, and some recruits have been seriously injured or never made it home after training.